is there are two bills in the House right now. Both of them are in committee. One is in the Armed Forces Committee. One of them is in the something to do with the international whatever. Both of those bills have to do with Section 1021 of the NDAA. One of them is asking it to be deleted. The other one, which is supported by 66 different congressmen, is asking for the language to be changed. Why is that when you tell us the language is all right?
Is that the question?
That's the question.
The language is there and is there clear. However, there are some people that have read it differently, even though I find that hard to believe. That it's Ron Paul's bill but wants to have it deleted. If you do that, you still have the same problem. You still have indefinite detention without any limitations. There are two other bills. The one you're talking about, I think, is Landry's bill. There's also one by Garamendi, both of which try to restate these things to clarify this is exactly what it means. I'm actually one of the sponsors on the Landry bill and the Garamendi, and Senator Lee is sponsoring legislation that is similar to that over in the Senate time. To say I have no problems with clarifying this. Let me say one other thing too. I don't like indefinite detention. Indefinite detention is a war power, and we are under a use of force, and that makes it very problematic. I would actually like to roll it back even further. The reason I voted yes on this is because it was a limitation, and I'll vote yes on the Landry bill as well as the Garamendi, because it clarifies what the limitation is. I'd like to limit even further.
Thank you.
Either of you, please.
Yeah, I would like to respond because I haven't talked about NDA at all, and this is one of the reasons I joined the race. I felt like it was a direct affront to our 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th Amendment rights. I joined Senator Mike Lee, Judge Napolitano, Oath Keepers, Gun Owners of America, the 10th Amendment Center, and a couple of 4-star generals that all agree with me, along with the lady that he talked about on his website, because I've watched her as well. The language is very ambiguous. What do you get when you have ambiguous language anytime? You hope and change. So we can't write laws that are ambiguous. I even have a problem with this HR 3676, which is the Landry bill, because it even says in there, citizens may not be detained. If you know anything about law, you know that may is an ambiguous word. It has to be shall or cannot. May leaves lots of rooms for, or you may or may not be. That is what's wrong with this kind of language. We have to use language that is legal, and shalls need to be put in there, and cannots and will nots, but may doesn't work. There you go.
Amen. Go ahead, next question. Next question.
Well, I'll start with Mr. Bishop. I'm mad. You know, I'm mad with all this BS and this ambiguity and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And if I cooked with recipes like that, my children would starve. Why can't we speak English? Is there an opportunity, and I have to direct it to you, Mr. Bishop, because you're there amongst what's going on there, but do we have a chance at getting back to speaking in English and just dealing with issues that we're constitutionally regulated to do? Or I'm rising up as a citizen. I'm trying to become active. I'm trying to do what I can. And I came here, I relocated from California 9 years ago because I'm in love with this culture. But this is ridiculous. And I know you agree with me. So it's not really a question as much as a statement. But I don't see an end to this ambiguity. And why does it take 15 legislative sessions to agree on something that is so ambiguous? What's the purpose? What's going on? You'll get your chance, Joe.
All right.
I'm going to ask you. Well, as a sitting congressman, so I would ask you.
No, there's nothing wrong with what you're saying. In fact, it's the right thing to do. Certain words are not applicable, like will not and cannot are not applicable in legislation. They have no legal meaning to them. May and shall do. It's a little bit wrong though, because may, if it's something that is allowed, may becomes optional. If it's something that is prohibited, may is not optional. It's the same as shall. And it's the same way in this language when it's simply said, as far as can you arrest an American citizen with that? It says the ability to do that does not extend to citizens of the United States. There's no ambiguity with that. So, but the issue is how can we actually make the language better? And there's actually, it's one of the things we did with the transition this year. We put new germaneness rules in there so you can't have huge bills. We made germaneness rules so an amendment actually has to be applicable to the base bill. You still got to take it one step further because you can put 2 different topics in a base bill, so that's still a problem. And the ability to write them the way the Utah legislature does so that you put new language underlined and old language that you're repealing is crossed through. We actually do it in Congress, but only after the bill is passed. That's one of the things I want to go through, and they claim they didn't have the software to do it, except they'll have it by September. That's the promise they made to me. So that when a bill comes before the committee, you can actually see what it does. I have the same problem when I read a piece of federal legislation, because it says, you know, after the and, the rest of the line is deleted. That doesn't mean anything to me. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to make sure is that what we draft up there is more legible. I hate to say this, well, one other thing, the federal government has never recodified anything since the 1930s, which means you have a subject here, here, and here, and what we really need to do is recodify it so you put all those things in one place so you can find it.
What are the chances of that happening in my lifetime?
The change in the way we structure it, I think we're going to be able to do it this year. The germaneness rules, I hope we can get to next year. Those are only, by the way, on the House. The Senate still has no germaneness anyway. But I think we can have it by the next session. That idea of recodification, no. That would take a mammoth amount of work and a lot of money, and there's nobody that really wants to do it. But it should be done.
It seems you're going on the assumption that that's accidental, and I don't believe it's accidental.
No, I'm not going on that assumption.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're not.
That's why I'm mad.
Yeah. So far, the way I see it, it's totally on purpose, because what I'm seeing going on is it seems like the Congress is trying to put all kinds of tools in the president's hands that he can do most anything to anybody, anytime, even sending a bomb out to knock you off as you're traveling down the road. And these things are happening, and it's terrible, and that's no accident. That's the way I see it.
I think we need to see our legislators actually writing our laws, rather than them being written by third-party organizations, lobbyists, and lawyers, because that's where we have a problem. If they can't even be read by a congressman, they should never be voted on. We spent 3 months debating the Constitution, and we got 4 pieces of paper out of it. We pass a bill that's 2,000 pages long in 24 hours. It's not right. We all know it's not right. But we have to have people that are just going to say no. I haven't had time to read it. No.
I'm a businessman. We spend a lot of money, to be clear.
Yeah. That's the truth.
Question here and then here. Okay, thank you. First, Bishop, sorry. Welfare reform. I have been to, this is probably my 5th or 6th meeting of reading. Everyone that I've talked to has said that they're going to do welfare reform, that they're going to cut welfare. My concern is how are you going to, what are you going to do, or what have you done specifically in regards to welfare fraud? People that can work, should work, and aren't. But on the other side of that, what are you going to do to protect the people who cannot work, who are not capable of working, that do require state assistance? How are you going to protect them, and how are you going to get the folks on welfare that should not be there? The second thing that goes with that is Social Security. I know that it's not its own thing. But the question I have is, why not? Why is it that lawmakers can pull from Social Security on war or roads or whatever they feel like, and then state that Social Security is a problem, when they're the ones that are pulling from it in billions and billions and billions of dollars, as compared to the little guy who's worked in that factory his whole life, and that's all he's got.
I'm going to.
Who are you pointing at?
The Congress.
Congressman Bishop, could you stand up because we can't hear you or see your face from over here?
Well, that's probably good, isn't it?
Okay, thank you.
Like you asked 2 parts that are big questions.
They are big questions.
The first one is actually an easier answer. If you want the federal government to deal with fraud in welfare or even running welfare programs, you're asking for a program that will never work because, once again, the only thing the federal government does well is mandate that everyone does the same thing at the same time everywhere else. If you want a program that is creative, which is what you're talking about, so it meets different needs and is just, it's not coming from Washington. It has to be devolved back to the states, which is why in the reform they did on welfare back in the 90s before I got there, one of the big issues they did is cut what was coming from Washington and devolve most of that authority back to the states. A program run by the states that can go into those specifics you're talking about on how to make sure people are working, how to track them, how to make sure somebody who is not going to slip through the safety net. States can do that. The federal government, by its very definition, is too big to manage that. It has to be done. That's federalism coming in here. The other one on Social Security, and I don't want to go too long because this is one of my favorites. Social Security was never designed to be your account. That's the problem. When George Bush wanted to reform Social Security, what, 8 years ago, and AARP and everyone else screamed and yelled he was destroying it, he wanted to do what you were talking about, to actually allow you to have credit for your Social Security account that you pay in. Right now, all Social Security is a tax. So you pay in right now that goes to the people already on it. Hopefully when you're on Social Security, your kids will pay in a tax that will pay for you. It has nothing to do with you. You don't have any claim on this. That's in the exact opposite direction of what the state does in the state retirement system. State retirees, their money goes to the retirement system, which is held in escrow for them. The state cannot go into that money. It's only in the state retirement system. That's what Bush wanted to do, and that is one of the reforms that should take place in Social Security. Right now, Social Security funds are not spent on other areas. They can only go into paying down the government bonds that it takes on other areas and pay for the debt. So you don't really take it for roads, but what you're doing is you're taking money from the government to pay for roads and then putting Social Security in here, and this is where it gets bad. The government then charges itself interest. That's mind-bogglingly stupid. In a state retirement system, the state invests its money in private sector, so not only do you have a new set of money going out there to boom the private sector, but you have the private sector paying interest into the system, and therefore they can manage it in the future. That's what Social Security should be doing. Our efforts to save Social Security will deal with it if we finally get smart about how we're investing the money. Instead of having the Social Security money being invested in government, so the government pays the government at a 2% rate, by the way, of interest, which is dumb, and it's been that way since Lyndon Johnson's time. Have it invest in the private sector, all of a sudden you have expanded the money that's available for expansion of the private sector, and somebody else is paying interest into the government that can help balance that program out. The other thing we have to have for Social Security is people have to, once again, revere families. They have to realize that kids are important. Social Security was started, there were 16 workers for every one person getting it. Today there's 3 workers for every one person getting it. When my kids are eligible, there will be 1.5 workers for every one person getting it. Which simply means not only we're living older, we don't respect kids anymore. We don't realize that kids are actually a blessing. We aren't having kids. And that is a demographic problem that is going to strike the American country in the face very soon. And it's a problem because we just don't revere families the way we ought to.
Thank you very much.